information was all you needed. There's people in the life insurance space given the game on this channel. Like I've literally like showed step by step the process to be able to set it up. A lot of people are like, okay, what else besides the information is there? What else was there that you feel like actually helped you really make this a successful venture so far? Sam sells less and actually makes more in profit. And in this video, if you stay till the end, we're actually going to be talking about his pivot from selling mainly mortgage protection IULs to now selling final expense one call closing, his transition from buying leads to generating leads, the schedule of a top producer, and how he's actually getting to the spot where he's netting not only just 6 figures, but he's actually keeping more money than he did before. So welcome to the podcast, Sam. Thanks for coming on here, bro.
Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it, man.
Of course, brother. So, dude, it's interesting because you and I started working together a little bit about 3-4 months ago. And so what was your kind of thought process behind going from buying leads? And I mean, how much were you spending at that time, like in buying leads?
Well,
I forgot what the actual number was.
Well, lead cost was at least $2K. And then you also had like dialers, things like that. So it was like 25, sometimes $3,000 a week. So it was intense.
Dude, that's insane. So you started there, right? So you started spending $2,000-$3,000 a week, and then what prompted your transition to actually start generating your own leads instead of just continuing to buy more and more leads?
Yeah, man. I've been in the insurance industry like at this point like 7 years. And back in the day, probably like 4 or 5 years ago, someone came to me and said, "Hey, you can generate your own leads." But it did not come with the support that working with you had. So I kind of had to figure it out on my own. And it didn't go very well. And I just didn't want to, I just was like, you know what, let's go back to the vendor method. It's just easier. So it wasn't until recently where I was kind of getting to the point where I'm like, man, I'm writing a lot, but I'm spending a lot. You know, your costs are fixed in this business, but you might have chargebacks, you might have things that the leaderboard doesn't represent well. And so I've always been like a top producer, but I'm like, man, I'm not as profitable as I should be. So I was ready to make the switch when I saw your ad and you came around, you know.
Before did you get a course, or did you get coaching, or like how'd that work from before when you started generating your leads at first?
Yeah, it was a course. I also think it's timing as well. Like if you're getting really good at sales, especially telesales, is its own, you know, uphill battle to get really dialed in on that. And then you got to learn the marketing angle, and you got to kind of wear both those hats. So I was a little bit green in the industry to be wearing both those hats quickly. And, you know, so it was great. They gave me all the information, but it was kind of like you have to now go and just do it. It's not really a support system. And I'm not as savvy in the tech side as probably yourself. So I needed that help, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Well, that's important, right? Like the information's out there. I mean, the reality is like if information was all you needed, there's people in the life insurance space given the game. I mean, on this channel, like I've literally like showed step by step the process to be able to set it up. But like like a lot of people are like, okay, what else besides the information is there? Like what's your experience been like as far as like getting more than just information? Like what else was there that you feel like actually helped you really make this a successful venture so far?
I think it's a proven models are always the best one to kind of get you to a point where you're like, hey, even if it's not working right now, there's other people that are. I'm just as capable. It's always the mindset that I've had in the insurance world and sales in general. You know, if other people are doing it and having success with it, you know, I could as well. And plus, I've worked with lead vendors for a long time. They just do what we do, and that's their full business model. So it works for them. There's other agents that it works for. So it always kept me being like, I've always taken ownership in this business. So if stuff wasn't going right, it wasn't like, oh, this industry stinks or the marketing side is too difficult. You, you know, you have to have the mindset that, hey, it's something I'm doing, and I need to just humble myself, ask for help, and do that, you know.
Yeah, I think that's something that you've done really well, because you came in and you're doing 20, 30, $40,000 a month in like issued production consistently. And like you came in, you were just like very coachable from the get-go, right? And I think that's like a successful trait in people who actually win just in the industry in general, right? I mean, 92% of life insurance agents fail. Only 8% of them actually win. And you and I both know, right? You can be part of the 8%, but that doesn't mean you're making money, right? I mean, the average agent is making $30,000 a year. So you have to be thinking of new ways to be able to innovate, to be able to make money, to be able to do it better, more efficiently. And I think that's what you constantly got to do, right? So you went from selling primarily mortgage protection to selling final expense. I'm curious your thought process. Like, has it been an easy transition? Has it been harder than you thought? Or what's your experience been so far on that end?
Yeah, I mean, I had with mortgage protection, I've been doing it so long that I didn't use the script anymore. I just would just do it, and it worked because I just been doing it for so long. I'd been doing it like 3 years, so it was second nature. And then getting into the final expense, and not just final expense, but call to close, is a different. It's just a different sale. And so I kind of felt like I had to go back to square one with that, which again, that's kind of can be a little humbling, especially when
Yeah.
you role play with people and they're like, "How long have you been in the industry?" 3 years, but you almost sound like you're kind of somewhat new. So
Yeah.
that was different. I mean, I've sold a ton of final expense, but it's always been for more mortgage protection twist on it.
Yeah.
So once you get the process down and you stick to a script, it can get actually a lot easier. Could you just take people through from start to finish, know the right questions to ask, how to speak the right way to no longer speak until like the 30 to 60 age range. Now it's more the 60 to sometimes 80. So, knowing how to talk to them and how to give them a solution is just a different ballgame. It's a lot more budget based as opposed to solutions based. You know,
Hmm.
you know that if someone has a mortgage, they can afford a certain premium each month. You just know it. But with final expense, you really got to ask those
Hmm.
questions to make sure that, yeah, I can sell the policy, but I also want to keep the policy. I don't want the chargebacks and how to
Yeah.
work billing and all those things. So it's different, but it's completely learnable,
Yeah. Yeah, the interesting thing about the industry is it's not just sales related. Like sales, there's people that are dogs in sales and they don't make it in the life insurance space, right? Because it's not just like a sales position. Like the sales side, you get the marketing side, so you have those dialed in, but then it's also just the insurance knowledge side, right? Like what carriers do you actually write? What's going to be the best for the client, also for profitability, right? Do you write 40 carriers or do you write 3 carriers? Which one's best for these situations, right? Underwriting, right? There's like which carriers will pay on issue versus draft versus will pay you only 6 months advance versus 9 months or even as earned. Like there's so many different facets to the business. And I think a lot of people, they're like, okay, I have the sales side down. I'm just going to buy leads or I'm going to generate my own. And that's all I need. But like, dude, it's interesting because there's so many other facets to the business that I think people miss, right? Do you feel like you were missing any of those or like were able to like kind of see like any like new findings like even though you've been a top producer, right? For like 3 years, were there any new things that you learned that you're like, "Oh, I didn't know that even though I've been producing for so long?"
Yeah. I mean, as far as like, I have a few agents that work with me, and so for a long time, the way that we've done it, the way I've done it, has not been like a business owner mindset. It's been more of an employee mindset where I know I'm doing well if my account's going up, not if I'm tracking my
Yeah.
numbers. And that's just not the way, that's how you ride the roller coasters of emotions because you're based on money coming
Yep.
in. You can't make CEO type decisions if you don't know your numbers. And you've talked, I still don't have my numbers as down as they should be, but like I've gotten so much better at that so that if I look at an ad, okay, is this one working? Is that one working? It's not based on necessarily, just an arbitrary number, how many leads are coming in, how many sales have I made. You can actually get down to the granular level of it and make real business decisions as opposed to based on emotion. So taking ownership, I'd say, is one of the biggest things for me on every facet,
Yeah.
of the business.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's funny because I think we're trained to be business owners, but like there's so many more things that go into being a business owner than just I don't know, than just selling, right? I mean, you got to know your numbers. You got to know what's your cost to acquire, what's your lifetime value a customer, right? Like how much does it actually take to actually get a client in? How much does it take to get a presentation? How many leads percentage of my closing? An interesting thing that you and I have talked about a little bit, but I really want to go deeper on this talk and on this podcast here for people listening, right? Because it's hard to actually understand if you're not in it, right? About selling a lot and not making a lot, right? What do you think plays a big factor into that? Because I've had multiple conversations with new agents, and they're like, "Oh, dude, you're selling. I'm selling $40,000-$50,000 a month, like just selling it." But you and I both know that it's like they're not actually probably making a lot. So like, what plays into that? Just for people that are new watching.
Well, I mean, just like anything, if you're paying double for a service, like if you can do the marketing yourself and you're paying half the cost it would take to hire someone to do it, I mean, that's so much of your profit because I've always said like every cost in this business is fixed. Your marketing, if you have a dialer, that's fixed. Whatever the cost is, the only thing that's not fixed is our commissions and insurance. Those can be charged back. So yeah, you can write 40 grand in a month, but if you spent 15, that's a fixed cost, but over the course of a year, that 40,000 you wrote might turn into 25,000, and you might have other things that happen. So yeah, it looks like you're writing a lot, but you're not because your costs are so high, and you can kind of kid yourself because you do get a lot of accolades um, in the insurance space. The more that you write, now you can still write 20 to 30 grand with kind of the system that we operate. And you can be insanely more profitable than someone running 50 to 60K buying their own leads. So
Yeah.
once again, that could be somewhat, ego based, depending on how you want to run your business. You want to be profitable or do you want the accolades of people in the industry? Um, you can do both. I mean, like, Max, who works with us, he probably gets both, but he's earned that position because he's so dialed and perfected his craft so much. But that's when you're starting
Yeah.
out making the transition to doing your own marketing. Yeah, your production level is gonna get cut in half, but your profitability actually might go up. So it's actually kind of a cool
Yeah.
thing.
Talk about that, man, because like I had that I made a video like a year and a half ago about like I sell less and make more. And I thought it was interesting because you and I were talking about that like, dude, on the leaderboards, you actually go down. You might not even be on the leaderboards anymore, but you're actually making more. So it's like this internal confidence that like I don't need outside validation. I don't need people praising me. I just need to be able to see my account growing each month. um, how is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten to the point. I've been in the industry for a long time, so I've gotten those like awards and stuff, and I don't. Once you get them, it's like whatever. Like you kind of when you won the T-shirt, now you don't need to do it every single year. I'm of that mindset. It's also my personality type. I'm more interested in quality of life and being profitable in business than I am in being on a stage. I really don't care about that. So
Yeah.
I can see it being a challenge for someone new in the industry and not knowing what they don't know. Once you kind of know how the sauce is made and how the industry works, you start to care more about the things that actually matter as opposed to the things that don't. So I don't even look at the leaderboard much anymore. I just look at my own, like the numbers that you've kind of coached me how to track. Those are really the only ones I care about. And I'm training
Yeah.
the agents that work with me to kind of be of the same mindset, so they stick around long term as opposed to like we just were talking about caring the things that don't matter, and that gets you out of the industry by doing that, chasing those
Yeah.
leaderboards.
Y- Yeah, when you're a top producer, you obviously want to see your name on the leaderboards. You want to be able to be like, for me, I love winning. I love being first. I love being recognized, right? And so it's like it's kind of an ego check at first, and there's so much pressure that's built into it, and maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not, but that's just kind of how the industry is designed. Is like people are praising there's awards, there's accolades that you're getting for being on the top of the leaderboards, but like nobody's really talking about, okay, how much money are you actually making? It's just kind of like this assumption that they're at the top, they're making the most, when in reality, I mean, my experience, and you obviously experienced this too, is that that's not always the case, right? Because to get onto the top of the leaderboards and say you're doing 60, 70 70,000 a month. I mean, I did $100,000 in a month, but like to be able to do that, I spent $20,000 in ad spend to be able to get there, right? So it's like, okay, and that was on a 70% commission level. So imagine being at a 120, 130% and having lead cost at 4,000 bucks maybe a month. Well, dude, at that point, you sell 30, $40,000 a month. I mean, your net margins are just so much higher. But it does take, you have to like completely shift, right? Like in Christianity, it's what's important to me, also important to you, is like there's a repentance. Repentance is like a 180 shift in a, like, as far as that goes, right? And it's the same, it feels like the same thing in the industry. You have to take a complete shift. You have to look at everything a completely different way. You have to get out of the, you kind of have to get out of the agency space a little bit. You have to get out of the IMO space and be like, okay, how do I make money? And you just have to like go from ground zero and build up again,
Yeah,
right?
you totally, you definitely do. And
Yeah.
it could be a little bit of a process because, like I was saying before, I mean, one of the nice parts about buying leads is that you don't have to think about any of that. Okay, and it can work. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's worked for me, but it just never was consistent. That's the other huge part about this business is being
Yep.
able to not have to is having control over things is nice because if
Yep.
you're relying on someone else to actually make your money, it can be a little freaky. It's kind of almost like you're still an employee to some extent. But when you actually take ownership and you have control, you can see the numbers, you can see leads coming in, I can modify things, I have full control. That's when you get some freedom, you know, and especially with other agents, you can start scaling it like we've talked about, and you can start feeding them leads, and then
Yep.
they become more profitable, they get more excited, and it can be a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. What are the numbers? I just want to like for you to share with the audience here, like what are the numbers that you're tracking on a consistent basis to be able to like make sure your numbers are hit? Like what are those numbers that you're tracking consistently?
So on the marketing side of things, I'll start with that, and then I'll go over to the sales side. The marketing, I'm checking kind of cost per lead because that's the biggest thing, you know, for a final expense lead, people are paying 20, 25 bucks a lead. I want to make sure my costs don't get up to that point because then it's not as, you know, it doesn't have to be that high. So my goal is to always keep that, you know, sub $10. And that is the part of this where, you know, you gotta be able to, you know, ask questions to people that have done it and been there like you have and say, hey, what should I do different with this ad? But once you find a winner, I don't want to confuse it. Once you find something that works, you can let that thing run for a long time. I know that you've had ads that you've run that you haven't really had to manage at all. They just run and they always produce a decent cost per lead. So
Yeah.
cost per lead is huge on that side of things. I've done a lot of the picture ads.
But what's interesting, right, is cost per lead is not always indicative of good quality leads, right? Because you had a recent pivot, right? Because what's your lead cost now?
It doubled from what I was doing. I had them at $5 a lead, and then I switched to kind of weed out some of the people that I just, you know, are just filling out forms online, make it more
Mm.
challenging for them to do it. And it doubled. It got to $10, but the quality went up. The sales have the conversations have gotten a lot better with folks on the phone.
Boom. There we go. Well, guys, if you love this video, drop in the comments down below. Share this with a friend if you found it valuable. Go follow Sam on his journey as he's really making the industry a better place. Actually building well and building profitably and sustainably, not only in business, but in life and so on and so forth. So again, appreciate you guys watching until the end of this video and hope to see you guys on the next one. Peace.